Hello and welcome. I'm Leigh-Ann Gerrans and you're watching W News Extra, broadcasting live from the Al Arabiya headquarters. These are our top stories. President Zelenskyy says he's sending his defense minister to peace talks in Istanbul with Russia and insists Putin is not serious about real talks. Donald Trump touches down in Abu Dhabi, becoming the second-serving US president to visit the UAE. And glamour, cinema, and a touch of controversy. The Cannes Film Festival is back in full swing on the French Riviera. Now to our top story, and President Zelenskyy says he's sending his defense minister to peace talks in Istanbul with Russia, insisting Russia is not serious about real talks. Earlier today, the Kremlin confirmed that President Putin would not attend the negotiations aimed at ending the war in Ukraine after Zelenskyy challenged him to be there in person. Zelenskyy made it clear he's sending his minister out of respect for Turkey's President Erdogan and also US President Donald Trump. Earlier, Trump also commented on Putin's no-show on board Air Force One. Here's a reminder.
Nothing's going to happen until Putin and I get together, okay? And obviously he wasn't going to go. He was going to go, but he thought I was going to go. He wasn't going if I wasn't there. And I don't believe anything's going to happen, whether you like it or not, until he and I get together, but we're going to have to get it solved because too many people are dying.
To discuss this and all of today's stories, I'm joined by Dubai 92 presenter John O'Hayes and news editor of Arabian Gulf Insight, Shane McGinley. Jono, let's start with you, first of all. We heard from Donald Trump there basically saying why Putin didn't go. It's because he didn't go. But now we've also seen that the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has confirmed there will be no breakthrough in these talks until Trump and Putin actually meet. So what do you make of all of this?
So I think the West wanted it to be so true that Putin would be in attendance. And I think Zelenskyy almost expected this as well. But this now completely undercuts Ankara's efforts to try and find some meaningful peace negotiations. But Putin very much is keeping the West guessing when it comes to holding onto the cards and saying, right, I will come to the table when I am ready. And that is very much what we saw today. The Zelenskyy challenge completely backfired on Vladimir Zelensky's face when he seems that he's been referred to as a clown by the Kremlin, saying that that they've used this to mock him and say that the legitimacy of his position in Ukraine is in fact lessened by all of this. So it seems that until Trump and Putin now sit down together, there can be no meaningful discussion and there will be none. And I think we alluded to that somewhat when we spoke on Monday about this, that we didn't think Putin would be there. And he's even sending a very junior Russian delegation hints that Moscow really did not expect this to progress. They didn't actually want it to progress.
Also, Moscow just released the list so late of the people who would be going that, you know, Ukraine couldn't really respond in time. And as Zelenskyy said, Shane, these are just stand-in props, really.
I kind of think that it was unlikely that Putin and Zelenskyy were going and Trump were going to be in the room, because if you kind of look at the time frame, the last time all of these sort of level of delegations got together was, I think, March 2022, so 3 years ago. Yeah. So they're kind of restarting at the same point. So a lot of this sort of war diplomacy, you know, there's official steps, like most things when it comes to governments at this level. So I think you can't just go straight to the presidents and shaking hands until there's actually something fundamental to say that there's going to be a peace or a ceasefire. So I think there's a lot of steps we need to go through and a lot of hurdles we need to jump through before you get to the Putin, Zelenskyy, Trump sort of trifecta. Well,
actually, it's really interesting because earlier I spoke to John Cavalage, Senior Editor for Outcome Modelling Analysis at Issue Insight, who told me President Zelenskyy let his ego get in the way of this meeting.
How this should have gone down was, regardless of President Putin's position on attending, President Zelenskyy should have said, I'm going. You come, you don't come. I'm going. I'm going to lead the delegation because I want to try to negotiate a ceasefire. I want prisoner exchanges. So there are other issues simply besides negotiating a peace agreement, negotiating an end to the war. And there are these steps, and they're important for Ukraine. So that's what he should have done, as opposed to he let his ego get in the way.
There we go. So John basically was saying to me earlier, his ego is getting in the way when it comes to Zelensky. Maybe he should have played things a little bit cooler, gone to Istanbul, showed I'm prepared to be here and not have sat in Ankara. So there is so many moving parts to this, really.
And it does seem, and we know from previous experience, Putin does not like to share the spotlight. And a meeting that was going to be face-to-face was as unlikely as it was. This was referred to as direct diplomacy. And it was supposed to be negotiations that were direct, but also indirect from the point of view that they would never see each other face to face. And as Shane rightly said, it would be very unlikely for at that level for them to sit down. But at this point of the negotiations have not even started. It would be an unusual place to kick things off. However, we are no further along. And now with the message from not just Marco Rubio, but also we saw from Donald Trump himself saying that there will be no progress until both Trump and Putin sit down. It is concerning because this means no ceasefire is on the horizon as we had predicted.
Yeah, no, and I couldn't agree more. And Turkey's foreign minister was tonight to meet the Russian delegation that is in Istanbul, and these will be for the first direct peace talks with Ukraine in 3 years, like you said. But Shane, Turkey's President Erdogan actually said today that he recognized Crimea as Ukrainian territory. Is this a clear support for Zelensky?
Well, yeah, definitely. Like Turkey has always been, a big supporter in this regard. Like almost a decade ago, when they reiterated that Crimea was Ukrainian, they've done it countless times. When the 11th anniversary of the annexation in March came about, they redefined it again. So Turkey's not really afraid to come out and say exactly what it thinks, which is good in some ways that it's sort of then hosting this meeting because it can be a good sort of mediator. But I think it is surprising because also Turkey's heavily dependent on Russia, so it can't afford to insult Moscow. But it's good to have someone in the room who can sort of be a sharpshooter and is not really afraid to to say what it thinks. But I would disagree with your clip there showing that Zelensky's ego got in the way, because I think that's a little bit over the top. Because I think if you look at what Russia wants, like I said, when the last sort of get together was in like 3 years ago, so they're restarting from that point.
Yeah.
And the four things that Russia wants is to Ukraine to give up some of its territory, and it's already gotten a fifth of it controlled. So that's what they're looking to give up. They're looking for Zelensky to shrink the size of the military. They're also looking for Ukraine not to join NATO and also to be a neutral country. So those are four really massive things, which I don't think we're anywhere near. So that's why when you put all of that into context, I don't think there's any ego involved. But also, I think you're not going to get all those presidents together unless there's a definite 100% chance of shaking hands, because Trump's not going to show up for a meeting that fails.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Yep.
Couldn't agree with that more. But it's interesting because when it comes to territory, Ukraine have always said, we can't redraw the map. It's in our constitution. This is the country. Like, how is this even possible? But it seems that we are just in a bit of a stalemate at the moment. And like Donald Trump keeps on saying, all he wants is peace. He wants to stop the bloodshed. He wants to stop the killing. The reality is this is just not stopping.
Well, I think Russia will talk. Russia will go to the table, but it will be on their terms. And they've been quite strict about that. And as we say, this is a mark of respect for Turkey more than anything else. Send junior delegation across to try and achieve something minor at a very entry level on these negotiations. But until there's some sort of a real strategic plan and some sort of a gain that can be made for Moscow and for Putin in general, it's unlikely. There will need to be pressure that he can't ignore. Otherwise, I don't expect this to really be a peace sit-down until there is massive pressure put on. And we've seen some of that pressure be increased in the last couple of weeks. I feel that we're on the cusp of an increase in that again now that these negotiations have somewhat fallen flat, because regardless of what it is a show and there is nothing else here. There's no meaning behind this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think like the last time I remember I was on the show, we were talking about Ukraine, and we were talking about how Putin can drag it out for as long as possible in his advantage. But I would sort of counter that by saying that Trump's on the record of saying that he wants to lower oil prices. At the same time, Russia's heavily dependent on oil for its income. So if he gets his wish and reduces the oil price, then it will bring Putin closer and quicker. So those steps that I was saying we need to go through, those could get move a lot quicker and escalate. And like Trump does seem like a sort of person who just wants to go straight to the finish line. But there's the diplomacy that needs to be done. So while I'm adverse to say we need lower oil prices sitting in this part of the world, if it gets Ukrainian peace, then it's a concession we might have to make.
Yeah, absolutely. And the whole reason Vladimir Putin did call for this meeting in Turkey was because of the threat of more sanctions coming on the country from the European countries like Germany that said it would be in place. So I guess maybe we could see those coming into effect, like you said, Jono, but really interesting point there. And I think, a lot of people were hoping for those pictures of Zelensky, Trump and Putin, but as we know, that never actually happened today. So let's move on to another story now, and that says Donald Trump has been welcomed to the United Arab Emirates by the country's president after stepping off Air Force One. He was shown around the Sheikh Zayed Grand Mosque in Abu Dhabi before attending bilateral meetings. This evening, Trump will be given a state dinner, like his visits to Saudi Arabia and also to Qatar. Well, Shane, this is quite amazing, I think, because the grandeur that Donald Trump has experienced, he's loved it. He's looked so happy, hasn't he? And the hospitality has been amazing. But so what have you made of the tour of the Middle East this week?
Well, Donald Trump is extremely popular in this part of the world, so I think it's no surprise that he picked here to come for his first trip. But I think if you were to look at it as a whole, I think it has definitely been a success. There's been huge amounts of billions, trillions in some respects in terms of numbers, and you can see that the relationship between the Saudi Crown Prince in particular and Donald Trump is very genuine, and I think that's going to be a positive for this region going forward when you've got tariffs on lots of different countries. There's a couple of things I thought I would take away from it. AI and technology was obviously the really, really big one.
And we saw Elon Musk and a whole host of these big
robots,
US tech people over, Sam Altman was in Saudi Arabia. It was quite the show.
Yeah, no, definitely. And, we had the dancing robots, and he was talking about Tesla automatic cars. I think Uber even said that there might be driverless cars by the end of, I think, even this year, which, anyone who's been on the roads of Dubai or Riyadh would think that's a positive, I would say. But one thing I thought that was really interesting that was kind of lost in the mix was there was a lot of Boeing announcements about jet buying. I think it was 160 or something from Qatar. But also they did allude to that there might be some on-the-ground manufacturing done in the kingdom itself, which I think was kind of the big miss story, because that shows that Trump's quite happy for manufacturing by American companies to be in Saudi Arabia, when his whole mantra was being, bring all of this manufacturing back to the US. So that shows quite a potential shift, and it shows a softness that he has for Saudi Arabia is actually very, very genuine. So if that can expand, across the whole of the GCC, because there's already Boeing parts made in sort of Abu Dhabi, for example. So that shows that, this part of the world has a trump card, I suppose you can call it.
Yeah.
But so anyone who's living here, that's a positive in terms of economics and business and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's huge to see as well. I think for the region it's wonderful, but we were one step short of a ticker tape parade for Donald Trump's arrival, and I think that is very indicative of that's why here was picked. The region was picked as a first stop, because anywhere else there was a potential for some level of a failure. To the UK, it may have been a discussion on the tariffs, which took place over the phone. A trip to the UK could potentially have ended in a less than favourable result. The trip to the Middle East, and especially to Saudi, was guaranteed to be a success. A lot of these deals, I imagine, would have been on the table for a little bit beforehand. So a smart move from the administration, and certainly one that has now had nothing but positive press as a result on the outcome. And I think the administration is on Air Force One thinking this has been a successful trip. And I think financially, it certainly has.
Oh, absolutely. And, also, just talking more about the economy, just bringing it back to you for a second, Shane, the US economy is actually doing better, than people would have assumed because of the tariffs. So in a lot of ways, I spoke to Ellie Cohanan yesterday, and she's part of the Republican team. you know, Trump's winning back home too because of this in many ways. You know, they're seeing he's making big deals overseas. The tariffs haven't really hit in, you know, the growth measures like were expected in the US.
Well, I think it's probably too early to say that for definite, but I think, yeah, Trump likes, you know, big numbers in the trillions, and you know, he's joked about, you know, Saudi's going to round it off to $1 trillion, so we'll have to wait and see what happens in that regard. But you know, it's 1.4 trillion is on record from the UAE. So these are all like gigantic big numbers that, you know, the Biden administration, you know, would have been highly jealous of. But so this all looks, you know, good for, you know, the Midwest voters and stuff like that. But a lot of this will probably come into fruition, you know, well past when Trump is out of office, unless he goes a third time, which, you know, is up for debate as well. But so I think we just need to wait and see. I think it's too early to say the tariffs have been the chess piece move that we're all predicting. I think it'd be nice ending for if you're in the MAGA camp, and if it's Republicans telling you that, it's to be expected. But I think personally it's too early to tell.
But actually, let's just talk a little bit more about the relationship, because earlier I asked Professor of International Relations, Dr. Eli Al-Hindi, about the relationship between the US and the Gulf regions.
He said that KSA and the Gulf region is the bedrock for security and prosperity, and this is a huge. I think these two themes are going to be the themes of this strategic partnership, as it was called. It's no longer a dependence. It's no longer a protection. It's no longer just selling weapons. It's now a significant partnership where both partners come in and contribute to that strategic vision of stability and of prosperity.
Something, Jono, I think that has made the big headlines. I know Trump was coming over here to get these mega deals and mega investments, but I actually think it's been the foreign policy in many ways, you know, meeting Syria's new leader, al-Sharaa, also, of course, the Iran nuclear talks that are happening, how this all progressed while he's been in the region.
Yes, so that it's promising for sure, and using an ally like Qatar in order to be able to further push that agenda is quite smart. Sort of agreed to is what he's described as Iran's policy on the nuclear deal with that. That is suggesting progress. We don't know what that final agreement is, nor do we know what it's going to look like just yet. Iran obviously has their agenda, which they would like sanctions to be lifted. They have said that they categorically will not give up uranium enrichment, which is the big thing that's on the table.
But also the problem with that is we don't know what percentage they're enriching uranium at. I think that's something that they want to find out, don't they, America?
And I think that's a big ask for, that's effectively, they keep the cards close to their chest for a very good reason. The US has demanded far stricter limits on how much uranium they can actually enrich, and a support for militias locally in Iran as well. They want some governance over that. The gap that is there between what the US wants and what Iran says that they're willing to do is there, especially over the nuclear capabilities, is still quite a large gulf in order to try and get across. So it seems like, yes, we may be on the road to progress. That may be taking a bit of a liberty, because it really depends on what Iran will bring to the table to say, yes, we are willing to do this. However, here are the terms and conditions of that contract. So perhaps, but it's certainly not the big win. Yes, it's the attention grabber. It's not the big win from the last couple of days. That one seems to have been financial.
OK, well, you know what? I think there's a few things we'll have to wait and see the outcome of, and those nuclear talks are one of them. But thank you so much for your thoughts on Donald Trump over here in the Gulf regions. Let's move on to another story now. And a spokesperson for Hamas has confirmed the militant group is in direct talks with the United States over peace in Gaza. In an interview with Counterpoints on Al Arabiya English, Hamas also said they believe Donald Trump can help broker a deal. Take a look.
To be honest, it is very strange. We were in direct contact with the American administration, sometimes through the mediators and sometimes directly. And we have told all the mediators clearly that our main goal is how to stop this aggression and how to allow aid to come into Gaza, and to give this a push and to succeed, and to help paving the way for a successful visit in the area, in the region. We have made this gesture to the President Trump by releasing the Israeli-American soldier Alexander Aidan. Within these talks and negotiations, there was a clear understanding between us and the Americans that when we do this, President Trump, he will thanks Hamas for this, but what is most important, he will, on the second day, oblige Israel to allow aid to come into Gaza, and he will call for an immediate ceasefire talks with the goal to end this war, including the prisoner exchange. Unfortunately, he was not able to exercise enough pressure on the Israelis, neither to allow aid to come into Gaza, nor to call for a clear and well-defined negotiations to end this ceasefire based on our approach, which is a comprehensive approach, which means we are ready to hand over all the Israeli soldiers in our hands, and in return we will get back some of our prisoners. But the main goal is how to end the war, how to get a total withdrawal of the Israeli forces outside the Gaza Strip, and to rebuild Gaza again. And by the way, we have talked about opening a political horizon or a political pave away for a political solution for the Palestinian-Israeli conflict.
And you can watch that full Counterpoints interview on the Al Arabiya English YouTube channel. Now, switching gears, it's known as one of the world's most valuable documents and is credited with framing constitutions around the world. And now it looks like an original copy of the Magna Carta has been discovered at Harvard University. The university's law school paid just $27.50 for what it considered an unofficial copy back in 1946. But two medieval history professors have now concluded that it is the rare and lost original from 1300, produced in the reign of King Edward I, which means it could be worth millions. Okay, I got through that because there's a lot of 1300s in that. Okay, let's talk about the Magna Carta. It's quite incredible, isn't it? Let's be honest. Are you like super over the moon about this?
What a find. I mean, it's an incredible find, and it just goes to prove you don't really know the value of something that's out there. It has been sitting unnoticed in a library for decades. And Harvard Law School, as you said, bought this in 1946. A couple of weeks beforehand, somebody in the UK had purchased this for about double the price. So it had already devalued itself in the space of a year, I think it was. It had devalued itself down to $27.50. But when it was spotted online, there's a professor from King's College in London. He spotted a digital version online and thought, this looks remarkably old, given that it's supposed to be a reproduction.
Yes.
It's just a copy. And he thought, you know what, we're going to do some deep diving into this, which is actually quite a laborious process in order to try and find out if this is genuine or not. They use advanced technologies, which I'm guessing is a level above. They'll have to do an ion scan to figure out if this can be carbon dated back to 1300, and hey presto, it was. What this means, there's 1,300 of them that exist, that are known to exist, so it's very, very rare. How much is it worth? I think how long is a piece of string? The last time was 2007 that we got one of these on auction, $21 million US.
Wow.
Obviously, since then, quite a few things have happened. And
inflation.
So I imagine that you could be looking 30 to 40 million potentially, and this has been sitting in a library completely unknown for decades.
You wonder how many more of them are sitting around different places.
Because this is what I was thinking. Whoever catalogued it back in 1945 misread the date. That's what the professor was saying, and assumed it was a copy.
Yeah.
So maybe everyone should check their attics. But who knows? It's quite fascinating.
And also, I thought when I was reading through the notes, I thought it was quite interesting that there's not just like one edition in the same way. There's the first edition of Harry Potter, and then there's like I don't know how many reprints of it, because the original king that did the Magna Carta was in the 12th century. I think it was King John. No surprise. And every king afterwards has rewritten it and redesigned it and done a new version. So what you really want is the 1215 one. I think this one that you said was about 13 something, so that's 100 years older. But I still think it's still a good find, and it's good to find it. Yeah, exactly. I know.
That's crazy. Something for a lot of people, I know maybe this is my naivety, but I always double check what the Magna Carta is and why it's so important to our constitutions? Is it one of the most famous constitutional documents? And it's what is the exact?
I mean, it's the OG. If you're looking at, so a lot of countries will have their own proclamation of independence, and they're basically set about for your very first agenda for what it is to be the country. And for Ireland, we have one that's been knocking around for just over 100 years, and you have the Declaration of Independence in the US. The Magna Carta is the original of that, so it's the OG when it came to what it is to, I guess, the Bible for how you set up your
democracy
country,
and
for
stuff like
democracy.
that.
And to have something of that magnitude to just sit there, who knows? And you hear these stories a lot where, you know, a Picasso has been discovered where it's been sitting in a grandmother's sitting room for the last 20 years and nobody knows. That is the equivalent of that.
Or the Shroud of Turin.
Shroud of Turin.
Is I think how you say it.
Yes.
Which I always think, like, is that one real? Is it not real? I would like somebody to come up with like complete and confirm on that one.
But I always want to know if that's real too.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what.
And that
that's
would be
one
like
I'm.
2000 or so. It would be a long way back.
No, definitely.
That's a little bit further back, but this is still a huge
No,
find.
absolutely huge find, and I do think that it was pretty remarkable now how far technology's moved along. Like you said, I wonder right now if we would have known this was completely original without the ultraviolet. I saw all the digital scans they did on it. Absolutely fascinating.
And you're back to the point of where you're looking at the ink that it's written with to try and figure out if this could be old enough because of the composition of it. Does it have the chemical elements that would allow it to be that old? And it's quite a science. Otherwise, you think you're looking at something which has been intentionally made to look older than it is, which of course is just a reproduction and probably worth not even a fraction of a cost.
And apparently the wording as well, because each of the kings changed the wording slightly, so they were able to tell like which iteration it was from that, which is quite interesting as well. But you know, I'd imagine every single university that has any kind of copy now, hopefully
they're checking that.
Yeah, maybe
they're
Trinity College.
Oh yeah, they want the 30 million little cash injection. But yeah, that was. Thank you very much for all that news on the Magna Carta. I feel like I learned a lot about that. I might have to do a bit more research. But we're going to move on to something a little bit more glamorous, and it involves cinema and also a touch of controversy. The Cannes Film Festival is back in full swing on the French Riviera, but alongside the glitz, new rules are shaking up tradition, and one of Hollywood's biggest action stars, Tom Cruise, has also made a return to the red carpet. Earlier, I spoke to entertainment reporter Stephanie Tecci, who told me what everyone was talking about, and that was last night.
People have been asking, hasn't time touched Tom Cruise, because he's 62 years old. He's coming for the final reckoning of his Mission Impossible saga. And the stunts he does in the film is incredible. But when he appeared on the red carpet yesterday, he spent over 30 minutes posing for selfies with fans. But what people were talking about the most was his shoulder-length hair. People are quite surprised at his age how he has such a good head full of hair.
No, Shane, I don't know what to say about Tom Cruise's hair, but it seems that he can still command the crowd and essentially the box office.
Well, I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about how there's no real A-list movie stars anymore, and I think we'll all agree that Tom Cruise is one of the few left that, you know, that are still around. So I think it's good that he showed up to Cannes again, because the last time he was at it was I think Top Gun Maverick, and that didn't do too badly at the box office, I believe. And it was 30 years before that he showed. So it does show that Cannes can still attract these huge names. But I would say that his new movie is out. It's rumored to be the last of the 8 Mission Impossibles, but I think it's also rumored that he'll keep going because this is a huge cash cow that he's got going on. But the last movie, didn't really perform as well as expected. But the new one has got 86% on the Rotten Tomato list, which is pretty good from a critic's point of view. So the expectation is that this will hopefully go to the $1 billion level, which none of the other Mission Impossibles have managed to achieve. So, it just shows that the prestige that he holds can in terms of getting publicity for his movies, and hopefully it can replicate the Maverick one from, I think it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I do agree that the old A-list stars that we're so used to seeing have kind of died out. But do you think it's a wig? The hair?
So I'm trying. Honestly, I don't know. Did he do it for a
I
role?
wasn't sure you were going to go there. But.
Is it for a role? Is he trying to get? Is he getting into a role right now? Because that is not a 62-year-old gentleman's hair.
No.
I can't see.
I don't know. Some of my uncles up the west of Ireland got pretty long hair down there, I'd say. It's grey, though, I have to say.
Yeah, the colour, the length, the texture of
Maybe
it
he's
as well.
gone to Ireland to where Shane's uncles are.
I think he's been to Turkey.
Yeah.
I honestly, I cannot quite equate how this man, he's aging backwards. It's a Benjamin Button type of a vibe with Tom Cruise. And as I say, I think he's a great actor. I think he's a superb actor. And I think it's impressive. But I would hope it's for a role. I hope we find out what that role is soon enough. Because otherwise he's one step away from
Maybe he
getting
just
dreads.
wants like a bit of a change, because sometimes I grow my hair for a bit of a change. But let's move on, because I want to know about the new dress code rules. Yeah. So it's no longer like, you can't be like too frisky.
You can be glam but balanced. That's the new idea behind Cannes Film Festival. So the ban on this is a ban on overt nudity, so to speak. Sheer revealing dresses, and it's not just for the red carpet, it's off the red carpet as well. So keeping in mind, if you happen to be in attendance at any of the other events, of which there are many that happen through the Cannes Film Festival, you have to make sure that you're wearing something which is seen as appropriate. And I don't think this is a bad thing. You remember the Kanye-US picture from last year, you know, on the red carpet with
Bianca Censori,
whose dress was... Well, really, it wasn't a dress.
Yes.
That was the Grammys, I think. Which
it was the Grammys.
I think it's fine at the Grammys, but I think Cannes is highbrow. It's sort of, you know, it's a film. It's, you know, it's classy. So I think, you know, everyone should raise to the top.
Well,
but I think raise the top, but lower the dress seam line a little bit. And I think it applies for men and for women. I don't know if there's a need for it to be overtly in your face. We're there for a purpose. The purpose is to appreciate these movies. It doesn't necessarily need to be the Met Gala when they're walking down. That maybe I'm slightly too conservative when it comes to what people are wearing, but I feel like, can we focus on the movies and not focus on what everyone's wearing heading up the red carpet?
But, you know, I do understand that point of view, like being more conservative, because obviously the Met Gala this year, I felt that there was a lot of skin on display. But also, Cannes brought this in so late that it's really difficult for some of the actresses who've already been planning these dresses for ages. I think it was it Halle
Berry? And I do feel sorry, and it's someone like that, I feel like, you know, a bit of a heads up would have been nice.
Yeah.
Halle Berry showed up and she obviously had a dress that wasn't.
I don't buy that. I think it's all TikTok media spin. Like, we're talking about it now, and so I never thought I would be talking about the Cannes Film Festival, but we are. And I think a lot of this, they think, okay, how are we going to generate as much publicity? All right, we need Tom Cruise with some long hair, and we need to come up with some sort of fashion sort of fiasco that will get all the tabloids talking. So I don't buy this for a second. I think it was premeditated, and Halle Berry knew exactly what was going on.
Well, I don't, because it said she had another dress, which is very lucky. It's very lucky she had another dress, because it begs the question, where do you find another dress?
Yeah.
But I'm guessing
They don't have Primark in Cannes.
Yeah, I don't know if she can pop in for a quick outfit change. Regardless, it's got celebs up in arms. Bella Hadid and Kendall Jenner are all wearing close to nothing dresses previously, so this would be...
but they looked lovely on the red carpet.
Yes,
I thought, you know, Bella Hadid looked lovely. Kendall Jenner looks really nice too.
It's a toned-down look.
It's a toned-down look. Why not? But Shane, one of your favourites were also there.
Yeah, Robert De Niro was there, and he got an honorary Palme d'Or, and I think it was the last time he got a Palme d'Or was nearly 50 years ago for Taxi Driver. So it's good to see that he's still getting awards. I don't think he's going to get an Oscar anytime soon, so it's good that Cannes is giving him the European equivalent.
It's upsetting because I love him as an actor. I think he's a great actor, but I think his time has passed, unfortunately. He's not going to be doing anything that's superb in the future. And I feel like it's unfortunate because I like the guy, and he seems like he's like the grandfather of Hollywood. I like the guy, but
yeah, he's obviously planning his retirement and, you know, feathering the nest. And you know, if he makes any more Ben Stiller movies, I think
that was a terrible idea.
Oh, was it? I don't know. I must admit
Dirty
something.
Grandpa is not one. I mean, you're never getting added. That's what it's called. That's what it's called. It's never getting a favoured list for anyone, I imagine.
I was thinking that Meet the In-Laws one, which, you know, it has a rhyming slang, so we won't go into that one.
Again, terrible as well. So it's been unfortunate.
But at least he got an award at Cannes, and I hope his suit wasn't see-through. That's all I can say, because it seems to be like the women get all, you know, but the men, I bet.
Yeah, I mean, the Met Gala is the one exception to the rule on that, where a lot of the guys' outfits also come to the fore as well. So maybe a bit more equality on saying guys. But I think that was very much the case with Cannes. They said, Guys and girls, a bit more modesty this year wouldn't go astray.
Maybe next year one of the male actors could wear a transparent suit as a protest vote kind of thing, go up the red carpet.
I think Shane will put you up.
I was just going to say, let's send you to Cannes next year.
I think that's all about you. We're sending you to Cannes in a see-through suit.
Well, yeah, if I get an invite, I will take the challenge.
Okay, and finally, we've reached that point in the show where Jono and Shane, you've come up with a couple of quirky stories of the day. Now, Jono, your story is actually fairly fascinating. It's about young people who eat spicy food, but they don't want to admit that they're eating spicy food and they can't handle the spicy food.
Yeah, so this is Gen Z yet again, and they say they can handle hot foods. However, even when they can't, they're not going to say it publicly. So this is very much in a restaurant whereby you don't want to offend anyone and say, I don't like the food here. They're saying, no, this is fine. And obviously Gen Z, and just to put that into context for you, because this confuses me sometimes, Gen Z, born 97 through to 2012, so they're between 13 and 28 right now.
Okay.
So they're peak cool right now.
Oh, okay.
They don't want to turn around and say, well, no, this is actually burning the roof of my mouth and I feel like I might die. They also don't have the digestive tract of Gen Y or Gen X's, so they also probably have that in their favour. And they will eat the food even though it's causing them extreme, excruciating pain, which is crazy. The best generation for this is the boomers. So that would be anyone who is aged, I think, upwards, 60 upwards from there. They said, look, we are wusses, we are softies, we won't have spice, and we have no embarrassment about saying that we can't handle it. So it's an embarrassment factor.
But they also boiled the vegetables so they had no colour in them, the boomers, you know.
Yeah.
And I think they've been blamed for taking all the houses and we can't afford any.
There has to be a medium ground.
There has to be a medium. But I don't know, I was thinking about this earlier when you were talking about it. Do you also think it's part of all these challenges that happen on TikTok? Because, you know, you have to eat, like, I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I always see this kind of stuff happen.
Or anyone who's been to college and had the iron stomach competitions that you always do in freshers, like, having spices is probably like the low level of it. But I would think this is strange that because they don't want to admit it. If I have spices, it's not even a choice. Like my face will.
You just start sweating. And coughing.
So I don't have that level of poker face to be able to say, no, that was lovely, thank you very much.
No, but I think that's the whole thing.
I'm not Gen Z, so
yeah,
maybe
that might be it. They might be slightly in the wrong generation. I think it's to save face first and foremost, and well done to them if they can tolerate it. That's great, but you shouldn't have to. I think once you pass over a certain point, and I don't know when that happened, but it's happened for me already. You no longer do things because it fits in with the crowd, and you do things that make you happy. You no longer eat foods that are not going to agree with you because everyone else is doing it, and you do things that work in tandem with your body.
I agree. I'm only 25, so I would have no idea what it is like to reach that stage, let's be honest. And Shane, the most popular names have been released, and...
in the US, we should say.
In America, but I just got one thing to say. I've got 2 men from Ireland, and of course the name's got to be Irish.
Well, yeah, so Liam, I would not have guessed Liam, I have to say, when I looked at even any of the names. And it's not even just popular like this year, it's been popular for the last 8 years, and obviously we blame One Direction. It's the only solution I can think of it.
And the Hemsworth, surely.
And Hemsworth.
And Liam Neeson, we can't leave him out.
And Liam Gallagher.
He hasn't been relevant for a little while.
True, he's got the Robert De Niro syndrome going on. We were talking about
So you
earlier.
think it's Liam Payne?
I would think so. Like there's the last 8 years, One Direction, they were all coming. I wouldn't have even thought Liam Payne was the most popular One Directioner, but clearly people like his name.
Yeah.
And then in the girls' names, again, Olivia has topped for about the last 6 years. Again, I would not have guessed Olivia. Like Margaret seems like a perfectly nice name. I'm not sure where that is in the ranking.
I just think some names aged badly.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Like Nell. There's no baby called Nell.
There isn't, and there's a lot of names that aged badly, and I feel like Liam is just one of those ones that is quite eternal.
Yeah.
I hope.
And it's quite a strong name, Like if you call your son Liam, it's
well, maybe
strong.
now Liam Payne and his demise might knock it off. So next year we should have to revisit it.
It could be. I just wanted to look up something. I don't know why I thought of this, but what both of your names meant, what Shane and John meant. So Shane, your name means God is gracious, which I thought was really lovely. And John, your name means grace by God. But then we figured out you actually both pretty much have the same name.
They originate from the same source.
When you take it back, and there's a very limited number of names that are truly Gaelic that you can translate into English and then translate back to Irish. And we've discovered that John, Sean, and then Shane is also Sean. So it's basically the same root of the name. And I love etymology of names. I love tracing it back to find out what it means. But we've got the same name, just spelt wildly differently.
Just different vowel. But I did look up, John is 21 in the rankings in the US, which is very, very good.
Yeah, very good.
Shane is 601, not so popular, unfortunately.
That's not bad.
And Leigh-Ann didn't make the top 1,000.
Okay, great.
It makes it unique. I think that's a good thing.
It's very
Yeah, it makes me unique. Yeah, Leigh-Ann. Do you know, it is funny, isn't it? Because I'm sure Lee is up in there, like L-E-I-G-H spelt, but
yeah,
Leigh-Ann,
that's 299.
Oh, that's
so you're moving up there.
Yeah, so we're moving up there. It is, but I was just thinking this earlier because we were talking about it. But your name, I think, just really defines you. And also, I don't know about you, but if you go to school and there's a girl you hate, your whole life you hate the same girl with that name. Have you ever noticed that?
Well, not in that regard, but my mother wanted to call me Taig, which is another Gaelic name.
Oh.
And my dad said, no, we've an Uncle Taig, I don't like him, I'm not having my son named after him as well.
Yes,
And also, it's probably a saving grace because that's T-A-I-D-G-H, I think, right? Is it? Is that close to it?
T-E-A-G-U-E.
This is, again, when the letters don't look like they should be there in that correct order and you can't really pronounce the name. And I think kids now, certainly, a lot of them have got... There's a lot of kids who are called Apple. I know that became very big because of Kanye West's kids and Kim Kardashian's kids and
Gwyneth Paltrow's
daughter.
Apple, yeah.
So a lot of the names that are rather unusual, and I feel like you may have done a disservice to your kids. And there's no such thing as an ugly baby name, because there isn't. All babies' names are beautiful, but it's when they adult that it becomes a little bit trickier to then work with people who've got names like Mercedes and Peaches.
I always thought Champagne would be a great name.
I mean, I can see many issues.
I did look up all the psychological studies, and they're always right. And they did say that your name can impact, and you're better off having a bland name because teachers, if you've got a fancy name like Champagne, they will think you're less intelligent and give you less attention. But if you're a John, a Liam, or an Olivia, they'll think will give you more attention. And also, when they looked at dating apps and also sending out CVs, if you've got a bland name, you're more likely to get a response. So if there's any parents out there, give your kid a bland name.
I just really wondered why the teachers wouldn't give me any attention at school. Now I know. I had
exotic. Your name was too
Yeah,
exotic.
they had no interest. They
gave me attention.
Yeah,
Didn't work
they kind
though.
of brain selling
Exactly.
me. Well, I just wanted to say.
You keep telling yourself that.
Yeah, I will. Thanks to today's guest, Dubai 92 presenter John O'Hays and news editor of Arabian Gulf Insight, Shane McGinley. And that's all from us on W News Extra. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and also follow us on X. G&T with Tom Burgess-Watson will be coming up next. Goodbye and thank you for joining us.